Well, welcome back to our RVTLZ Breakouts. This morning, I have with me Joe Pippin and Laura Victoria. They are part of our comms department. They run our comms department. They are the comms department, and they have joined us today to do our creative collab. And so we're going to talk a little bit today about kind of behind the scenes of putting together the creative elements for RVTLZ, just to kind of give you guys a look at how we get things started and what the creative process is. So thank you, Joe and Laura, for being with us today. We're excited to hang out with you guys.
Yeah.
So the first question that I have is, you know, when we got started with RVTLZ, we started planning a little bit late this year, actually, but it was probably back in like January, February that we were pulling everything together. So, Joe, what are some of the things that you needed to do in the creative process?
Yeah. So what I've found it's good to start your creative process for any project starts months before the actual process starts. So I've broken down the way that I start a creative project into 3 points. And there's also a movie quote, because that's the way that I think about things in context of movies. There's a movie quote to help you remember each stage of the creative process. So number 1, there's always a bigger fish, as said by Qui-Gon Jinn, okay? Qui-Gon Jinn of Star Wars fame. And basically what that means is, like I said, the creative process starts months before the design. And what I mean by, or I guess what Qui-Gon meant by there's always a bigger fish, is in the context of the movie, they were in their little space underwater speeder flying away from these big fish, and they were about to like get eaten, but then a giant fish came and swallowed up that smaller one. And so he said the quote, whatever. But for us, the context is there's always someone that's a few steps ahead of you. And for me, I have tried to surround myself with people who are more creatively advanced than I am, that have been in the field longer than I have. And whenever you surround yourself with those types of people, it starts to open your mind up to a different perspective that you wouldn't have been able to have if you just kept everything to yourself. So before you start any projects, you need to make sure that you're building those advanced relationships and getting around those people so they can help you build your creative perspective. So that when a project comes, when someone comes to you with, say, RVTLZ with this conference, you're not overwhelmed with trying to think outside of the box. You've already surrounded yourself with the people that you could go to upon starting the project. You can trust these people and show them, and they can help you along the way. So number 2, after there's always a bigger fish, it's don't think, feel. That is said by Bruce Lee in Enter the Dragon. And context of Bruce Lee saying that was he was training a student and specifically training him how to kick. And what he was saying was that he would tell the student to kick, and when he would try and perfect his kick, trying to make it look the most beautiful. And what he meant by don't think, feel is that if he was fighting another person, he wouldn't be thinking about how perfect his kick was. He'd be thinking about how it would feel against the other person, right? And trying to defend himself against his opponent. But for our context, don't think, feel. If I didn't create this project, which again, let's think about in the context of RVTLZ. RVTLZ didn't come from myself. So if I create the branding or the graphics for RVTLZ based off what I think is cool, it's not going to land with anyone. So what I did was we set up these meetings with Pastor Jenny and the youth team to figure out what was their vision behind RVTLZ. So for instance, what does RVTLZ mean? I looked up the definition. Definition means imbue something with new life, invite validity. Oh my goodness, I can't even read. But to bring new life to something. And then we dove deeper into scripture, what that means and what they were going to base the topic off of in the breakouts and the different sessions and stuff. So that's where we wanted to start from. Don't get in your own head about what you think it should look like, but rather know your demographic, do your research, and get out of your own head. Think about what you want. Again, in our context, what we wanted the students to get out of this Revitalize conference. And then the last point, last quote for you is, it's the job that's never started as takes the longest to finish. Samwise Gamgee Fellowship of the Ring. Okay, Samwise is one of the greatest partners in all of movie history, literature history. He always helped Frodo make sure he got to Mount Doom to destroy the ring once and for all. But what I mean in our context is, it's the job that's never started that takes the longest to finish. You just have to start the creative process. Once you've done your research, you've built those relationships that you can trust with new ideas and things that might be out of your wheelhouse. You can get those creative inspirations from different people around you. You've done the research on who you want to target with the process or with your design. So in our case, it was TLC youth. That was our demographic. Do your research. What is something that's popular in the youth just today in general? Not even just in churches, but just in general, what's popular in schools? What are people watching? What are kids watching? And then get out of your head and just start. Just start creating things. And it might look absolutely terrible, but it's okay, because you know that is, now you know that that terrible thing, you're not going to do that terrible thing. But before you started, you never knew. And so what a lot of people say is that, and this, I'll end with this, is that a blank screen is like super scary, or script writers for movies, a blank writing pad, like a blank paper, is super scary. But I think that a blank screen has more possibilities than a full one. There's fewer number of biases and hindrances on a blank screen, so you don't have to be afraid of it. There's more room to create original ideas on a blank screen. You just have to start.
That's great. What do you think are some frustrations or obstacles to the creative process, Laura?
A big thing, one of the things that Joe mentioned was staying in your head. So I love what he was saying is the creative process starts months ahead, because it really does. Like, usually an idea gets sparked, and sometimes people think like, oh, let's try and translate this like super fast, but sometimes it doesn't always translate super fast. It goes, you can get inspired literally by anything. One random sentence that somebody said when you were hanging out with a friend, or just looking at nature, or watching a movie and getting a quote. Or I even have random creative inspirations when I'm on Instagram or social media and a random ad just pops up and somebody says something on a random ad that I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. And then it just floats around in my head. One of our department's favorite videos is called Embrace the Shake. And he talks about, actually not that one, a different one, where we watched a video called Originals, where it was just talking about original thinking. And he was talking about how people who are some of the most productive and creative people in their lives are the ones that they see the idea and then they allow themselves to get distracted for a period of time so that they can just mull over that idea, so that they can just have it kind of going in the back of their head. And that's a really powerful thing. I've seen Joe do it. I've done it myself, where it's just like you get that idea, you let it just spark off for a period of time. And then once that period of time is over, you actually do need to sit down. And that's one of the things that's super important of like what Joe was saying is don't think and feel, is literally just actually sit down and do it. Because the longer you stay in your head, the more frustrated you're going to become, because you're going to build it to a bigger place where it's just like, oh, now it's this huge daunting idea that I know I probably will never actually be able to accomplish. And you like, that is everybody has ideas, huge ideas where they feel like, I don't even know how to get this started. So just take the one small little thing and start, right, whether it's writing, whether it's drawing, whether it's creating a video, doing an Instagram video, doing a TikTok video, doing anything, like literally just start with a small portion. And even if it's terrible, somebody that an ad that ran by my social media the other time, we subscribed to this program called Masterclass, shout out, I have ads now that I'm subscribed to it. I have ads that pop up on social media for it. But one of the teachers that was on there, he's a filmmaker, and he was saying that they have a group of people that get together, that literally the job of that group of people to get together is to come up with the most terrible ideas possible and share it with one another. Because when they get together and just share what they already know is terrible, they're thinking of things, they're growing, they know that they can pull from those terrible ideas and actually create something awesome. So when it gets frustrating and when it gets to the point where it's like, oh, I just really feel like I can't do this, it's one of those moments where it's like, God is the ultimate creator. He gave you that idea. There's going to be something. It may just have been, I needed to create something terrible to know that I had the capabilities of creating something. That's still something that's super valuable. And then also, I had the creative idea to create this. It didn't come out great. I don't think it'll actually be usable, but this idea that I created right here with this like one small pocket, I can apply this to something else, or I can take it and use it in this other completely different idea. And one of the big things just to remember about creativity is it's super fluid. It doesn't have to stay restricted in a box. And sometimes we think that ideas have to stay in that little pocket of that one idea that you have, and it really doesn't. It can actually move from this pocket to another pocket and just kind of flip-flop all over. So instead of letting any type of frustration over an idea that's not coming out, just try to like step back and be like, okay, how can I rework this to be something else?
Yeah, so like there may be an element in there that kind of like, you might not land on that first thing, but there might be like one ingredient, a color, or like one element that kind of like leads you down the path of what you end up developing.
Yeah,
that's cool.
I think that's, again, like you could find that by starting. If I wouldn't even be willing to show any of you the first graphic design of Revitalize, because it is so bad, right? But we did draw, I think I literally pulled one thing, and it was, if you've seen the art, there's like a hand drawn or like painted like sun. I think it was the only thing that I took from that first graphic, and then the name Revitalize. But that was, that was like, I changed the font, like everything looks different besides that one thing. But yeah, my frustration in myself when I make something bad, and the communications department will sometimes laugh at me for this, but I tend to, if it doesn't look exactly how I envisioned it in my head, and then like I'll show everyone and there's not really like a positive response, I just delete it. And it is such a bad it's such a bad thing that I do, and I've tried to train myself. I now have a folder on a drive that says graphics that suck. I actually have a folder that says that, and I try and save all the graphics that I think look so bad. I save that, at least just like, maybe not like the full file, but just like a snapshot of what that looks like, and then file it away, because I've actually gone back to those that looked really terrible at that one point, and then, like Laura said, pulled out different items for things completely unrelated.
Yeah, that's so valuable, that none of it, you might not use it, but it's not trash.
Totally. Absolutely.
Like Forky on Forky on Toy Story.
Yes.
Right? You're not
so
trash. I love that movie. That's awesome. Well, when we were working on Revitalize, and often when we have projects that you guys do for comms, and our students might not have like big projects. Maybe they do. Maybe there's something for school that there's a project due, and they have specific guidelines, or maybe they're just creating something for their own. But we usually have specific pieces of collateral. We usually have like print items, postcards, screen slides, a video, merch, all those things. And so what kind of comes first? Like, if okay, I've got to create all these things, do you start with the brand? Do you start with like a postcard? What's your where do you start with that?
I'd say we definitely start with the branding. So and what that looks like for us practically, again, if we think about in the context of Revitalize, we will create the initial like screen slide. So what you guys would see on social media, like the first thing that anyone sees of the conference, and then based on what is on that screen slide is like our branding, the style of the way that Revitalize looks, the colors that are on there, the emotions that you feel after like looking on there, and then only then can you really start to not think but feel the conference, right? The shirt actually that I'm wearing was one of the merch pieces for the conference, and on the back originally it had a different quote, and this was made originally for a different project, but again we pulled it into Revitalize because it fit. But the thing that didn't fit was the quote that was on the back. It was a cool quote, it was just a feel good whatever, but it was something that looked cool but didn't feel like Revitalize. It didn't have the same imbuing with new life feeling that we wanted to feel from the merch, so we altered it. So instead of creating something that we think looks good and then try and shift it into the branding, think of the branding, get in the mindset. And I'll even and this goes with like making the video too, or advertising, or even just like the little cardstock that we'll give out to students, is I'll make a playlist that gets me in that same feeling that the youth team was wanting students to feel. A playlist of just like, whether it's instrumental music, pop music, rap, like anything, it just gets me in that that brain space. And I find that it's way easier to create content for anything if you just find out what you want the emotion, what you want the viewer to feel from your project, just getting in that mindset, getting in that feeling, and then the cool things come after that branding.
I think that's something that's also super important, is for us, we work for the Life Church. Like, we do our creative process for the church, for you guys as youth, for kids, for what we call big church, separate from kids and youth. But one of the big things that is important, like Joe was saying, is we get the why behind it. And sometimes something that's super important for us working and trying to be creative for the church is sometimes what we will think is cool and really awesome is not necessarily something that would reflect our values well, or the why behind it. And I feel like the creative process is sometimes kind of in line with our walk with God, because we kind of have to die to ourselves and what we really like, to what is the vision and the why behind the church and what we're trying to grow and what we're trying to build as a youth department, as a kid department, as a church, as a whole. And just like sometimes, wow, I really don't like that idea, or let me see how I can tweak it so that we can find a good balance where it's like, okay, this is going to be something that's really cool, and this fits really well within our values as a church, as a department. And it's just the same in our walk with God, is that usually God just asks us to obey him. So we're usually a lot dying to what we really want to do to just obey him. So that creative process is, it's interesting that God is the ultimate creator to me. And the creativity process is very much so in line with how you work and how you obey God on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good. So what would you guys say is a challenge for students, like next steps they can take? Maybe they're interested in, getting into some kind of like, fields, like creative field as a career. Maybe they're just kind of like wanting it to, maybe they just feel creative and they just want to express themselves somehow. What would be some next steps that you would give them?
I know for me, I actually, I didn't go to school for graphic design or for video editing. I was just given the opportunity to do it. And that only came from doing like a lot of research. There's a lot of really amazing tools online, and I feel like everyone says that, but like I know for myself, like I felt that there are so many tools online on YouTube, just Google by itself, where you can learn some of the most amazing things. And just like having relationships with people in the field that you're trying to get in, like the internet is just as much an asset. You just have to like take time. Maybe don't play Fortnite that night. Maybe don't watch that episode of Netflix, a new TV show or whatever. Like take that time that you would watch something else and devote it to bettering your craft, bettering something that you're trying to get into. And so I think that for me, I've it's just been, I don't know, there's been so many things that I never felt like I should have it's like they call it imposter syndrome, right? Like you feel like you shouldn't have the opportunity to do what you're doing, but I think that it's all credit to God. He has a plan and a purpose for us, and you can pray for things, but along with prayer, it requires action. Like you have to push, you have to drive yourself, and he'll give you the desires of your heart, but he's just not going to sit back and just like give you everything. You need to put in the time, put in the work, and really devote yourself to, if you're serious about a profession or some type of design or different types of creativity. If you put in the work, you'll see amazing things happen just as a result of you doing things and pushing forward.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say, honestly, is just get started, because there is a lot of resources out there. Like if you want to be a writer, just sit down and write. I mean, more often than not, most writers have piles and piles of writing that have never come to see the light, because it's just not work that they will ever put out to light because they don't like it enough, and or publications have told them no. When it comes, like, if you want to be a dancer and you're not finding exactly what you want in your dance classes, there's a whole bunch of YouTube videos out there. There's a whole bunch of professional dancers that are starting to create online platforms to teach online, so you can get professional dancers actually speaking into you automatically. Theater, there's a lot of local theaters that you can go, and while local theater gets a bad rep, you can still learn a lot through just the action of doing. And that's something that's super important, is just don't get yourself stuck in this place where it's like, oh, I really, really want to do this. Ultimately, what it comes down to is work and action. Like, sometimes we as creatives get a bad rep because it's all about our feelings. And honestly, in order to be a very successful creative, you have to be able to sometimes put aside your feelings and say, no, I'm actually going to do what is required of me right now in order to be able to accomplish this cool thing so that it actually can come out. It's a combination of, yes, I love this idea. I want to just pour my time into it, but also when I am feeling lazy, when I just want to watch that Netflix show, when I just want to play video games, when I just want to read a book, and know that if I actually do want to actually create something, I'm going to have to set aside time to actually do it, even if I don't feel it in the moment.
Yeah. I think as like frustrating as starting a project is, it's incredibly freeing to see that project done. Again, whether or not it's good or whether it looks like how you wanted it to look like, it's just incredibly freeing to see like something that you produced, like you made this, no one else did. You saw your hand write it. You saw maybe you videoed yourself, like Laura said, doing a dance or a theater or a play. What I've done practically is when I was trying to learn graphic design is I made an Instagram account that had 0 followers, and I didn't go out looking for, I didn't even tell anyone about it. I just made one on the side, and like if I liked the way that something looked, I would just post it. So again, no one saw it. I wasn't even looking for affirmation from anyone, but just me seeing it on like as a digital art piece, for lack of a better way to put it, like that was just so freeing to like start the next thing, and that just like gets the ball rolling. Or even starting a blog, you know, maybe that no one else sees, but you seeing your text on the screen as you scroll through might be that level, or might push you to the next level to start again producing more and more and more. And then as you do that, you will get better. Like it's not something that you won't reap reward from. It might take longer than you might think, but that one step forward is a step forward. You are going to get better.
Something that's also super important that I love that Pastor Josh has as a huge value for our church is being grateful for everything. So one of the biggest things is just like with every little thing that you create, find one thing that you're just like, I accomplished that. Like, it's like your testimony to yourself. I'm really grateful. I actually finished a project. Like, it could just be as basic as I just finished. Like, that's a huge deal when you just finish a creative project.
Totally.
But even within that, like, within this creative project that I finished, there's this one small section that like I'm really extra proud of, because I was able to sort through emotions to really pull something cool out of it, or I was really able to just express what I wanted to express in a way that I haven't ever been able to express before. So just really taking those small moments as you're doing all the different creative projects that you may do is super important, to just be like, yes, that was me. That was really cool. And write it down. Like, even have like a gratitude journal or something like that. That's like, on this day, I accomplished this really cool thing, just so you can look back and be like, in those times when it's like frustrating and you're not finding like motivation to do anything, you can look back and be like, these are some awesome things that I have done, and it has happened because I just went for it. And so it can encourage you yourself just for your future creative projects too.
Yeah, love that.
That's great. All right, well, that is the time that we have today. So students, we are going to challenge you to go ahead and just get started creating something, whether you like to write or do graphics or videos or dance or whatever your creative process is. We just want to challenge you to go for it. And if you have something that you would like to share with us, we would love to see it, and we would love to cheer you on, and maybe even be part of sharing that with the world. So you can post stuff on Instagram, tag us, send it to your leader. Let your leader know that you want to be part of the creative process in youth, whatever we can do to encourage you on your next steps. Thank you so much, Joe and Laura, for being with me today. Y'all did a great job, and we have a lot of really good next steps, and I got ideas too for the things that that I have to do. So thanks so much for being here. Students, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, and we will see you every Sunday right back here, and also Wednesdays for Youth Night online at 7:30.